Locked on Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Get the applicants you need faster and for free at linkedinjobs.com. Today is part two of the good and the bad series. You heard the first part was Stephen and Gotti from Fanatic Perspective, the Fanatic Perspective on the good and the bad of the Longhorns thus far. Today is part two with Nash from Nash Talks Texas on YouTube. We're talking analytics, offense, defensive, and just some coaching numbers that explain why Texas is 5-3, and have they overachieved, underachieved, or are they on schedule? And then part three later on in the week with the Texas Homer from YouTube talking about schematics, what's working, what's not working, and what we need to do against Kansas State to right the ship and get back in the win column. But first, Nash, we're talking analytics today, and I want to start with the passing offense, and that's been led by, of course, Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card at different points throughout this season. And I believe that you've looked at some numbers or you've looked at some graphics that may explain on a deeper level their performances thus far this season.
Yeah. So over here, college football data. I think I sent you this graph earlier. There's a graph that really shows like how Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers' progression has gone. And like looking back on it, it just makes like this is one of these things where when the stats match what you're seeing on the field and on the screen, that's when they can start to be helpful. And if you look at this, Quinn Ewers, like Hudson Card, yeah, he struggled at first, and similar with Quinn Ewers and their first dropbacks, but quickly, the predicted points added (PPA) it jumps up, and with Quinn it skyrockets. Right, but with Hudson, you start to it's going up a little bit, but we've seen some regression back to almost where Hudson's PPA is. So I mean,
You saying we're seeing like Quinn Ewers right now, like his regression is almost to where Hudson Card left off.
Yes, exactly. The predicted points added per. So this is a per drop back.
And how would you explain predicted points added per drop back?
So basically, what happens is if a quarterback, obviously, when they do better, they're going to add more points to the team. So like a guy like a Hendon Hooker or CJ Stroud, you're going to see a high PPA number, points per predicted points added. Sorry, you're going to see that number higher because every per drop back, they're adding more points on. So basically, they're just it's efficiency is what it comes down to. They're far more efficient when they drop back. And we've seen that efficiency decline with Quinn Ewers.
Gotcha. But overall, I think when you look at Quinn Ewers, so I looked at some numbers, and he's 18th in the Power 5 currently with a .66 expected points added per pass. And he has a 1.82 win probability added on 142 passing attempts thus far. Just a little context on that. So he has about 0.012 win probability added per pass. That's going to be right behind Hendon Hooker, who's probably the leading Heisman candidate at 0.014, and above CJ Stroud, who's probably second in the Heisman voting at a 0.010. So when you hear those numbers that he's 18th in a Power 5 with 0.66 expected points added, and his win probability is 1.82 on 142 passing attempts, what does that say about what Quinn Ewers has brought to the team thus far?
It tells me we really I know we just saw a really bad game against Oklahoma State. That was it's a stinker. It is what it is. But it tells me when you see him up that high, and when his regression is when he's regressing and he starts to level out at that, I mean, that's not bad at the end of the day. When you look at it and you say, okay, well, he's where Hudson Card was starting to level off, when we were seeing Hudson Card improve. Well, that was a good Hudson Card by just general consensus. So I think really what these stats shows, I mean, despite Quinn Ewers throwing out a bad performance, right?
One of the worst we've seen in 20 years.
When you go to, I think it's above 30 pass attempts, it's the worst you've seen out of a Texas quarterback since before Vince Young. So, but now it's also important to add in Like I put out a graphic on Twitter the other day, showing all the bad stinkers that quarterbacks have put out. So any game that was, I included every game below 50% completion percentage. And we've had every single quarterback, including Colt McCoy and Vince Young, have a stinker. But the one thing that you see with the good quarterbacks is they don't continue to put them out there. They get better, you know. They don't repeat bad results.
Yeah, and so one thing that kind of concerned me is when I was looking at the chart of the expected points added per pass play, there was a lot of quarterbacks underneath Quinn Ewers. I know Quinn Ewers hasn't started the whole season, but there are a lot of quarterbacks under Quinn Ewers that have enjoyed more team success. So like Max Duggan, well, he was one spot ahead of Quinn Ewers, but TCU was undefeated. Jackson Dart was one spot behind. Ole Miss is, I think, top 10. They're 8-1. Spencer Sanders was behind Quinn Ewers. They're 6-2, ranked 18th. Stetson Bennett is ranked way behind Quinn Ewers. You know, of course, Georgia has all the talent, but they're 8-0. They're ranked number 1. Sean Clifford from Penn State, they're ranked 16th. Jaden Daniels from LSU, they're ranked 15th in the country. So you see that Quinn Ewers, by, you know, his EPA is better than all of these quarterbacks, but they're enjoying more team success. And another thing that concerned me when I was crunching the numbers, looking at the analytics, was how the passing is way less efficient in the second half than it is in the first half. And that's probably leading to a lot of the second half collapses. And if you're squeamish, I apologize, because, I mean, some of the stuff I'm about to tell you is you're not going to want to hear this. So Texas is 47th overall in passing offense, but that number drops down to 114th in the country in the second half. In the first half, Texas quarterbacks have 62.8 completion percentage. In the second half, Texas quarterbacks have 55.4 completion percentage. In the first half, Texas quarterbacks have 18 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But in the second half, Texas quarterbacks have 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And in the first half, Texas quarterbacks have a 152.15 passer rating. But in the second half, that number drops down to 115.14. So they're all dramatic drop-offs in the passing efficiency from the first half to the second half. Nash, do you think that's directly correlating with the fact that Texas has had some second half flameouts really this season?
Yes, I do. And I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but because I think I'm going to cover this in a future video, but like I dropped some stats in a group chat earlier, right? And I was like, because I was going through, and I said I was going to go through and look at this stuff, but I avoided it as long as possible, because you don't want to disappoint yourself. But in the first when you're counting the second half drives, we've had 54% of our drives go for 5 plays or less. And okay, well, yeah, some of those drives are 5 plays or less because you score on them, right? Okay, well, let's remove those plays. All right, well, and then this is counting all power. This is only Power 5s, right? Well, that number goes to 38%. So 16 of 37 drives we didn't score on in the second half. And then you go down to you remove West Virginia and OU, the game, like OU, just whether it was they were missing their starting, whatever it was, okay? It was an anomaly. As much as I love to sit here and shout 49-0, I'll say it I'll say it every time. 49-0, you know? But that was an anomaly. And then also, I don't think we can count the second half of a West Virginia game where there was just a complete blowout. So I tossed those out. And 70.3% of our drives are 5 plays or less. And we only score on 28.5% of drives in the second half.
Excluding Oklahoma and West Virginia.
And West Virginia. So these are games that your Alabama, your Texas Tech, your Oklahoma State,
Iowa State.
It's those games. Yeah. Iowa State, yes. Like, the games that, hey, this is a dogfight. We're still fighting in,
Yeah.
Because Iowa State, that was a fight till the end. Texas Tech, fight till the end. But at the same time, when you're not scoring points in the second half, like I dropped this in a dynasty chat because some guy who was a Alabama fan, like he was ribbing me, and he was like, "Man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't." He was like, "It just slipped out of me," and I'm like, "Air it out. It's real. It is what it is at this point." Like, I keep saying at this point, Texas is the shoulda, coulda, woulda team. Should be better, could be better, would have been better.
And one question I've had is, should they run the ball, more in the second half, or are they getting away from the run too early? Because when I look at it, the rushing numbers have definitely been more efficient than the passing numbers, and they've actually gotten better in the second half. So when you look at it, Texas is, and this really doesn't make sense to me at all, they're 21st in yards per carry. So they're efficient when they're running the ball, and they're 43rd in the country in yards per game. But in attempts per game, they're all the way down in 71st. And then if you look at it in the second half, they're 18th in the second half in yards per carry. So that they get a little bit better in the second half. Newsflash, you keep running with BIjan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, it wears down the defense. They're 27th in the second half in rushing yards compared to 43rd overall. So they're getting more rushing yards in the second half. Now, of course, some of those games is they're up and they're running the ball. And that's between teams who have played 8 games. So when I look at it, the rushing numbers are better in the second half, but they're efficient overall. You got BIjan Robinson, who I pulled the numbers on BIjan Robinson. When you look at some of his stats, he's getting a 24% first down percentage. So he's getting a first down 24% of the time he runs the ball. 41% of his runs are over 5 yards. You talked about those drives of less than 5 plays. If he's getting 5 yards on 40% of his runs, we're going to get, a first down. 15% of his runs are over 10 yards. 8% of his runs are over 15 yards. He's explosive, one of the most explosive running backs in the nation. Behind him, you have Roschon Johnson, who's giving you 367 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Over 8% of his runs are going for 15-plus yards. And then when you look at it, they have a 47% run rate, right? I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at y'all, but just bear with me. They have a 47% run rate. So basically, they run the ball 47% of the time, which was 76th in the country. But they have a 49% success rate, which is 31st in the country. So the rate they run it is 76th in the country, but their success rate is 31st in the country. When I tell you that their rushing numbers are efficient and they get better in the second half, and when I tell you that their rushing success is at the top of the country, but their rushing attempts are in the middle to the bottom of the country, I question why we're not running the ball more. I question, should we be letting Roschon and BIjan Robinson carry this team and then letting Quinn Ewers complement our running backs and not vice versa?
And this coming from somebody who, if you look hard enough, there's a video of me somewhere earlier in the year where I was sitting there complaining about Sark, saying, with this offensive line, we can't do complimentary football. We can't do it. Quit calling so many run plays in the second half. Because it felt like that was the problem for our all these drives, all these like 5-play drives or less. But that's not what it was. And like you say, when you got Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, like those two dudes, that is legit. Like, especially by PFF standards, I don't even have to go look at this right now. Like, those are 2 of the top 20 Power 5 running backs in all of college football. And then I went and I just did a video hunting, trying to find out what running back statistics really matter and show how good the running back is. And I pretty much came down to the best statistic that you can do to individually look at a running back and see how he performs is missed tackles forced. And not only missed tackles forced, but taking that down and looking at how many missed tackles they force per rush. Because you may have a guy who he gives enough rushes. So like a Roschon Johnson, he gives enough rushes to give you a good sample size, right? It's not a great sample size, but it's a good enough one.
61 carries on the season.
Mm-hmm. But his missed tackles force is going to be a lot lower than everybody else's. But I need to add in the Oklahoma State game and recalculate the numbers, but I'm sure it hasn't changed. He's leading the nation in missed tackles force per rush among the top. And I shouldn't say leading the nation, but this is when you look at the guys that are draft worthy for this year and next year's draft, he leads them. He's in the top of them. And I have a video recently going over that, but when you have these guys, right? When you got these horses, you let them work, you know? You let these guys carry the team, and then like you said, Quinn Ewers, he adds a compliment to it but this is also the other deal is you can't become one-dimensional, you know? Because I think this is what really led to the problem in versus Oklahoma State, I think. Is our passing game was going nowhere. So they were able to just, okay, let's load up the box and stop the run. I mean, we had 160 rushing yards in the first half, and I think 53 in the second half at Oklahoma State. It's a night and day difference. And whatever the reason is, we are consistently inconsistent in the second half. And that's got to change. It just has to. If not, the reality is we're just going to keep losing football games. Because you can't be letting teams coming down the home stretch, you know, getting that confidence at the end of the game, right? It's like if you ever been around somebody that, like, when somebody calls game, and then there's that dude that's just pissed off that guy called game way too early, and he's made it it's his personal motivation just to win that game at all costs. And then guess what happens? That guy wins the game. The guy that called game, he looks like an idiot. And that's Texas with all these second half leads. And I'm not saying we have our players out there calling game, but I mean that's just what it looks like to the general perspective of the team, to the public outside of Texas fans. That's what they see us as. They see us as that team that if they got the lead, you're still safe. You know, you got double. If you're down double digits, we're good guys. We're good. But like it goes back to that Texas Tech coach. We knew they were going to break. So there's something that's got to be figured out.
Yeah,
and like you said, I think it starts with handing the ball to Roschon Johnson and BIjan Robinson.
Just a little bit more, and I question why Keilan Robinson only has I talk about this all the time in the chat. I question why Keilan Robinson only has 19 touches through 8 games on the season, and it's even more frustrating when you talk about some of these second half woes, because looking at some of some more additional offensive numbers, they're 18th in the country. So this was after, I shouldn't say they're 18th in the country. They were 18th in the country after the Oklahoma State game. They're on a bye last week. I'm not sure if the numbers probably have updated, but they were 18th in the country in points per drive with 3.01 points per drive. That's really good. They were 41st, in the country in points per drive that went inside the opponent's 40. So they're averaging 4.27 points on drives that went inside the opponent's 40. Obviously, they're not as efficient on their drives overall as they were, as drives that went inside the opponent's 40. Some of that has to do with them not having a great kicking game this year, them being down in, I think, 75th, 76th, and kicking efficiency at 72%, which is awful, and that has to be better. When you look at their big play percentage, so this is going to be 12-plus yard runs and 15-plus yard passes. Texas is 8th in the country in offensive big play percentage with 93 big plays through 8 games, averaging almost 12 big plays a game. Once again, that's 12-plus yard runs and 15-plus yard passes. But we're still looking at an offense that only scored 3 points in the second half, an offense that continues to bog down. So, some questions I have and have already asked her, once again, why are we not letting BIjan, Roschon and Keilan carry us and Quinn complement them instead of vice versa? If we have the best running back room in the nation, why can't we flaunt that for 60 minutes? Why does Keilan Robinson only have 19 touches in 8 games? We talked about the playmakers, BIjan and Roschon, and we featured, Xavier Worthy as well. But why are we using Jordan Whittington and JT Sanders so inconsistently? Why aren't we using anybody else, period? Right? And then why the dramatic drop off in passing efficiency and scoring in the second half to where the numbers are dropping by 30, 40 points in some instances? The rankings are going from top 25 to 114. Like, what's going on the offensive side? Those are some of the questions I have, and some of the numbers show that this offense has been really good at times, but also hasn't been the offense we've seen. And like you talked about, so eloquently, sometimes it's when you dive deeper into the numbers, it paints a better picture of why Texas can't finish these games, why sometimes they can't play for 60 minutes, but it's also still very confusing with the amount of talent that they have, and especially the performance they've gotten from the defensive side this year. And coming up next, after a word from Nissan, we'll talk about how the defenses look this year, and then some of the analytics and some of the man-alytics, just some of the people that are balling on that side on the defense. So first, a quick word from Nissan. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from Texas weekend game or throughout the history of our alma mater. And this week's thrilling moment from Texas was the bye week. We did not have to worry about Texas winning or losing, that stress, that anxiety. You didn't have to worry about that. You could have a stress-free Saturday and just watch some other college football. You didn't have to be as invested. So that was the thrilling or lack thereof moment from Nissan. And this segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at NissanUSA.com. All right, Nash. So now we're talking about the defense, and they've had a couple bad performances, but from what we all, thought preseason, this defense has, in my opinion, outperformed expectations. When you look at some of the numbers on the defensive side, scoring defense, they're 27th in the country. Yards per play, they're 22nd in the country. Now, total defense, they're all the way down, not all the way down. They're 63rd, which is about, midway in the nation, but it's kind of that Pikakowski, Gary Patterson, bend but don't break defense where, you're 63rd in yards given up, but you're 27th in scoring defense. And then when you get deeper in the numbers, they're 29th in the country in points per drive, right? They're averaging 1.75 points given up, points per drive. They're 35th in points per drive that get inside our 40-yard line. So drives that get inside our 40-yard line are only averaging 3.40 points. That's really good on the defensive side. And then they're 43rd in the country in havoc plays. And havoc plays are going to be tackles for loss, pass breakups, interceptions, and fumbles. And they're 24th in offensive success rate allowed at 38%. So when you hear those numbers, if I would have told you those numbers before the season about this defense through 8 games, Nash, what would you have told me?
Well, I think if you had said you put these numbers on last year's team, there would be a lot of burnt orange colored glasses, Kool-Aid sipping Longhorn fans talking about the Big 12 championship and possibly a college football playoff appearance, right? And that's because we had a horrible defense last year. Per the stats were saying, hey, this defense is 100th at best. It might sit in the 70 to 80 range, but it's not doing good for Power 5, right? And especially the big dogs of the Power 5. And then one of the things was the rush defense. The rush defense last year was bad, but this year it's so much better. I think we're sitting at 3.6 yards per rush. We're a top 25 rush defense, and like you said, if you had said at the beginning of the season, we got you lay out all those stats, you tell me all those things.
They're good.
Woo,
they're good.
We're 8-0 going to the bye. I'm feeling happy. I'm
at least 7-1, right?
Yeah,
maybe 6-2.
I'll be like that. You would have, because especially then, we're trying to we're sipping the Kool-Aid, but we're trying to dial it back. Because there was not a single Longhorn fan on YouTube that was going to be sitting there caught saying, "We're beating Bama. We're giving a run for their money." You know that there you'd been okay 8-0
I
maybe.
said it. I know we lost.
Maybe.
I said it and we lost by 1 point. You know what I'm saying? Locked on
Hey.
Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host.
Well, true. You did say it, but I'm talking about like the preseason. You know, like before anything. You know, you got the Kieran video. You know, that funny video where it's like we might lose to Bama. We might. You know, and if you had said we had those stats, like it's just it just
mind-boggling. It doesn't compute. 5-3.
It doesn't compute. Like there's a computer error going on up here. Like and then like it's for Texas. It's been this case of if it's not one thing, it's another. You know, like you look at last year too. Like to take a small trip back to the offensive side of the football. Okay, well, all we need is a quarterback that can throw deep. That's all we need. Well, we got that. All we need is better pass blocking. Well, we got that. Still same results.
Yeah. And, you know, although the defense definitely has improved, and we've seen playmakers on better field production, and we've seen development of a lot of players that have been here at all three levels, defensive line, linebackers, and safeties. There have been some concerns, and really those concerns have been in the two true road games at Texas Tech and in Lubbock, and at Oklahoma State in Stillwater. So when you look at it, Texas is only giving up 15 points a game in DKR and the Cotton Bowl, but they're giving up 39 points per game on the road. And so the questions I have are why the struggles on the road? Like, why are we so dominant on the defensive side in DKR and then shutting out Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl? But yeah, we're giving up almost 40 points a game on the road. Now, I know that, you know, one thing that has been brought up and is a very valid point is the snap counts, right? When you have them on the field for 100 plays against Texas Tech, when you have them on the field for 98 plays against Oklahoma State, that's obviously going to be a concern. But it still seems a little weird that they're so different night and day between home and neutral site games and true road games.
So I'll say for the Oklahoma State game, the snap count deal, I would accept that, but at the start of the fourth quarter, I was like, we're losing this game. I was streaming. I'm like, if you're feeling good about this, you need to start feeling bad, you know. But like, it's like the snap count. It is a thing, but I think it's more of an issue of at this point with the road games. Because this is something that I was curious about when we were first going on the road to Texas Tech. We had those games at home. It was a 3-game home stretch, right? And I was worried about us falling into a rut and getting too comfortable. And now I'm worried about is it a coaching issue? You know? Because the only reason why I say that is because the places that they're playing well in, and this year particularly, home games in Dallas. Well, Dallas is a neutral site, right? But at the end of the day, that's a home game for both teams, and I'll explain that because you're not going to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome that you've never been to. You're not going to some random football field that you've never been to. Unless you're a freshman named Brennan Thompson or another guy, you've already been to the Cotton Bowl. You've already experienced running out on the field, hearing the OU boos at the first half, and then getting to the Texas half, and then that's your kingdom with all the roars. And you might experience different nuances through the game in different years, but like the locker room, the trip to all the stuff that really kind of is different about going on the road that you only really get twice. If you're a senior and if you stay 4 years at college, you only go to the Oklahoma State twice. You only travel to Stillwater twice. You only go to Ames twice. But so I wonder if there's a comfort if these guys they're able to play well where they feel comfortable. where they have a little bit of comfort. Hey, we played here, okay? We have some familiarity. We're comfortable here.
Yeah.
And another thing that really kind of, I think, contributes to that question is those environments. You had the Texas Tech, that was a sold out game. Yeah, 60,000 people, but those people are sold out, and they don't like Texas, so they're loud. And then same for Oklahoma State. That thing is scrunched up. There's no sidelines on that thing. And I have that question of, can this team, and it's not a matter of play because we've seen them play. They like at Oklahoma State even. There were moments where this is looking like that statistically top 25 defense, and then there was moments where it's like, where are you? And so I just have that question of, can they perform when they're not comfortable? Because at the end of the day, everybody's going to be able to do anything when they're comfortable.
Yeah, great points. And then when we looked at it, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we're seeing so many pressures, but at times, especially against Oklahoma State and Texas Tech, they haven't really turned into sacks. And so that's another question I have, how can we convert more pressures into sacks? And then we've seen in the Iowa State game, and then we saw in the Oklahoma State game, there was times where they were making a lot of defensive substitutions, some because of injury, but some of just rotations. I understand that at defensive line, but not necessarily as much as the linebacker and the defensive backs as we've seen. And we've seen them giving up touchdowns. So, once again, I'll pose those two questions. They can be rhetorical, but how can we convert more pressures into sacks? And then why all the defensive substitutions at linebacker and defensive back that are not injury related, that are leading to touchdowns? And then talking about defense, that's kind of connected to special teams. So when we talk about special teams, and they haven't been great for Texas this year. 76th in the country in field goal percentage, 13 for 18 on the season. That's 5 missed field goals through 8 games. That's a lot, 72%. And when you look at 2 of the misses, so there's been 2 misses and losses for Texas. 1 field goal that was missed would have put Texas up 13-10 going into halftime against Alabama. The second one would have put you up 37-34 against Oklahoma State with 5 minutes left. And I feel like this is something that we knew would be an issue coming into the season. And I'm not sure if it was ever properly addressed. I feel like we heard the reports all offseason that kicker was going to be shaky for this team. And I don't feel like that was addressed. And when I look at it, this parody or not hilarious or not, Lane Kiffin was at the press conference talking about they went and found a kicker at the frat house, and their kicker is 9-10 this year. Making 90% of his kicks. And we got 72% of our kicks being made. So I just wonder if there wasn't enough emphasis put on that position this year, which we all, as fans and people that cover the team, knew would be a concern. And has that cost Texas to this point? Is that the reason they're, unranked in the AP poll and 5-3?
And I forgive me if did we miss a field goal versus Texas Tech? I feel like there was one in there. I feel like there was one.
I don't think so.
I'm not entirely sure, but
yeah, I don't think so. I think the other 3 misses all came in wins.
I think it might have been the Texas Tech guy that missed it. That's what I'm thinking of. But yeah, you got it's once you know Dicker's gone, right? It should be especially when you're talking specifically about special teams. That's priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on special teams is replacing Cameron Dicker, because that dude was absolutely clutch. And any Texas fan that watched that Cal game with Gerard Hurd and then the missed field goal with Nick Rose, exactly how important the field goal kicker, that was the last extra point field goal I ever took for granted. Before, I remember I used to count extra points and field goals before they were, because that's what we knew as a Texas, we may have not had this at all times blow you away guy like a Hunter Lawrence or anything like that. But like you said, like you're saying, the guy at Ole Miss, 9 of 10, we had guys that were reliable, and this isn't to say that Burt Auburn can't be reliable, but does it hurt to bring in another guy? And when you're the University of Texas, when you're a school like Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, when you're a big name school like that, there should be zero problem getting a kicker to come to your school. Like you should have kickers lining up at the door waiting to get in. And the fact that it's, it looks like a struggle in some of these wins or some of these losses it's a problem. And then also, like, something that really opened my eyes is because Jeff Banks, he has been a good special teams coach, but that UTSA, when they converted on that right out the second, or was it right out the second half? It was right after a score or something. They got a onside kick. Yeah. Just completely caught us sleeping. And we've had outside of the blocks, the punt blocks, we really have not had a great special teams play. It's really those punt blocks that are propping up the special teams. So that is one area that I'm kind of trying to keep my eye on. And also, to your point about the speed earlier, Keilan Robinson.
Yeah, he's fast. He's really fast.
He is quick. Him and BT.
Yeah, my bad. I'm over here watching the World Series out of the side of my eye. And I thought Nash was going to carry me. He stopped talking. I was over here watching the World Series. I was over here watching the World Series out the side of my eye. That's my bad, y'all. All right, next we're going to talk about some general, just team stuff, some general statistics, and ask ourselves, why is this football team 5-3? We'll get into that next. But first, a quick word from Sweat Block. Look, I talk to y'all about Sweat Block all the time. Wherever you're going, whether it's to the club, you're going home for Thanksgiving, you're going to the grocery store, you're going anywhere. You need to be smelling good, and you need to control that body odor. And that's why I'm here on Locked On Longhorns to tell you about Sweat Block, because I can't have you out here, a listener, a fan of the show, looking bad or smelling bad, not on my watch. And Sweat Block was created by a doctor to help with his own excessive sweating. So if he knew he had a problem and he had to create a product for it, I definitely feel comfortable recommending it to you. And I feel comfortable recommending it to you because it's doctor created and doctor recommended. And I'm definitely the furthest thing from a doctor. But if you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweat Block. Save 20% with promo code LOCKED ON at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon. Save some money, 20% off on Sweat Block. So, Nash, I sit up at night a lot, thinking about a lot of things. And one thing I continuously think about is how this Texas football team is 5-3. So just bear with me. I'm just going to go through a gauntlet. I'm going to go through just a lot of stats right here and a lot of different numbers. And we're just going to ask ourselves, how is this football team 5-3? So one is the point differential. And I know that I think in the first half, they're outscoring their opponents by over 90 points. But in the third quarter, I think in the second half, that drops down to like 4 or 5. And they've been outscored in the fourth quarter by 29 points. How is a team with all of this talent and a top 40 offense pretty much in all metrics, a top 30 defense in all metrics, getting outscored by almost 30 points in the fourth quarter? But we're going to continue to keep going. And I actually want to bring you in on this one because we have a graphic. I was supposed to be showing a lot of these graphics, and we just get to talking. But we have this graphic right here. Nash, when you see this graphic, this opponent-adjusted EPA per play for the Texas offense and the Texas defense, we have a few cues on the screen for the people that can see it. But just explain to everybody what you see when you see this graphic. as I say this, as we're watching the World Series, I'm gonna give y'all a live timestamp. Kyle Schwarber just hit a home run. The Phillies are up 6-0 on the Astros. I just gave y'all a live timestamp on Locked On Longhorns. If you're listening this far in, I appreciate you. All right, go ahead. Nash, when you look at this graphic, opponent adjusted EPA per play, and you see that Texas is really almost in the Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Ohio State range. They're right there on the chart. How is this football team 5-3 based on what you're looking at on this graphic?
I'll go back to the shoulda, coulda, woulda. This team it should be better. It could be better, and it would be better. And I go back so I think this is when you combine things, right? When you look at though, if you go back to the stats that I mentioned earlier, and where we're just ton of 5-play drives, so we're not having a lot of drives where we're keeping the offense on the field. So our defense basically isn't getting a lot of breaks. Well, a big problem is, and then this is kind of a little bit older stats, but a week ago we were a bottom 30. This is October 21st, the day from the thing that I'm reading. We're a bottom 30 team in third down defense. On first and 3, on downs, third and up to third and 3, we're 59.1%. So they're getting a 60% completion, not completion, but conversion percentage on short. On medium, 4 and 6 yards on third down, we're 44%. 7 to 9, 34.8, and then 10 plus is 26.9. And I mean, the fact that 26.9% of fourth down or third downs on 3rd and 10 are completed, 3rd and 10 and plus, long. It's a problem. Like when you're allowing conversions and you're a bottom 30 conversion percentage on third downs. And I heard, shout out Rod Babers for and Mike Harge, Hardball Harge. I heard them talking about this earlier when I was doing some errands. You have this team that they're playing good on, they're making plays on first and second down. But then when it gets to third down, where'd he go? Where are we at? And it really is. It's almost mystifying, looking at that graph that you showed earlier. Because if you're a Longhorn fan that's been sipping the Kool-Aid, right? This graph is it's telling you, hey, you were right for the most part. Y'all, like I said, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Y'all should be a lot better. Y'all aren't a clear top 4 team, but y'all should be up there. Y'all should be in the conversation. And if you look at it, if you get rid of really 2 of our close losses, we would be a consensus top 5, or not 5, top 10 team, maybe 5 team. And like I keep saying, it's just at this point, it's just baffling. You don't know. It just leaves you speechless almost.
It really does. And when you look at it, when you look at blue chip rate and talent, and I know that the rankings aren't perfect, the 5-star, 4 stars, and all of that, but as they're graded, I believe this is by 24/7 Sports. When you look at Texas, their roster this year, the 2022 roster, is the 6th most talented in the nation. When you combine all of the recruits in the recruiting rankings, this Texas team is the 6th most talented in the nation, behind Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas A&M. I guess that might make you feel better. They're higher than Texas. And then Clemson, right? But you look at that, Clemson is in the college football playoff. Ohio State is in the college football playoff. Georgia's in the college football playoff. And Alabama is 6th in the country based on the talent that they have on their roster by the recruiting rankings coming in. And Texas A&M is under 500. and Texas is 5-3 and unranked. And then when you look at win probability, so outside of the Alabama game, going into the game, Texas has been favored to win every game. So they had a 99% chance to beat Louisiana Monroe. They had a 3% chance to beat Alabama. We saw how that went. They had a 81% chance to beat UTSA. They had a 69% chance going into the game to beat Texas Tech, and they lost. They had a 70% chance to beat Oklahoma. They had an 85% chance to beat Iowa State. They had a 68% chance to beat Oklahoma State, and they lost. And right now it's giving us a 57% chance to beat Kansas State. So in two of your losses, you had, according to the experts, according to the analytics, a 63% chance. No, excuse me, a 67% chance and a 69% chance. This is on the road against Oklahoma State, who was ranked, and on the road against Texas Tech. And based on the talent on your roster, you have the 6 most talented players in the country on your roster. And you're looking at a 5-3 season. And you're looking at not being ranked in the AP poll currently. Look, I came into the season saying that Texas was going to be 9-3, and they still can achieve that. It's very unlikely, but they still could go 4-0. I still think 8-4 would be an improvement. 7-5, 6-6, no, 5-7, none of that is possible. But really, what I'm saying is when you look at all the numbers and when you look at all the analytics, everything is saying that Texas is better than they should be, and we keep saying that it's the year before the year. But last year could have been the year, but Texas folded that opportunity away. This year could have been the year, but thus far they folded the opportunity away. So yes, next year they may be better than they are, this year, and next year they may be able to, start, really fighting for a Big 12 championship if they're not able to make it this year, and really fighting for a college football playoff appearance, next year and moving forward. But we can't continue to say that next year is the year when they've had opportunities the last 2 years and they squandered them. This has been part 2 of the good and the bad series. It seems like we mostly talked about the bad, but the numbers are showing how good this team is, and the product on the field is showing something different. With my brother Nash Talks Texas part 3 coming soon, with Texas Homer talking schematics of this Texas football team and talking Kansas State. Nash Talks Texas on Twitter and on YouTube. Nash, please plug anything you have before we get out of here. This might be the longest episode of Locked on Longhorns I've ever done. You know what I'm saying? But we had so much. I just looked at time. We had so much to get into, so many numbers to get into. You know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, honestly, we could have kept going on, but
could have. You know what I'm saying? But
we're running long.
Yeah, but just go ahead.
Shout out to anybody that's still here.
Yeah, just go ahead and plug what you need to, brother.
Yeah, I was just gonna plug the guy that most of my stats have come from tonight. Covered 2 figures on Twitter. He is he's only at 691 followers. I'm proud to have said I found him under 500 followers. This dude is this account. If you're a stat fan, love college football, even NFL stuff, great visual stuff, great visual stats. Go follow him on Twitter, and it's cover 2. Just cover 2 and then figures. That's it.
Yeah. And, I love baseball, so I got to give y'all a baseball update. I'm trying to root for the Astros, man. I live in Houston. I want to see a parade, but Rhys Hoskins just hit a home run. It's now 7-0, and I'm time stamping again. It is the bottom of the 5th, and Bryce Harper is up at the plate. Yikes. Longhorn Nation.
Oh, he took a hack right there.